everyone. Let's move that. Is that better? There we go. You'll notice once again this has changed. It's not exactly what it's going to be next time. It's going to be turned a little bit. I've changed a bunch of stuff to adapt to my new stuff I got. Ooh, the music is going wild. Oof. For the new lights and the new microphone and stuff I got at the holidays and other things I want to do for setup. So that's what I've been doing the last couple days, along with taking down Christmas and cleaning up my house, so I'm exhausted. Sorry for the late start. I sound really nasally because, of course, I've got sinuses going on, but we will not be delaying this series anymore. It's been like 2 weeks since we've read it. Hello, Jeff, Kohi, Alice, Akatsuki, Liz, Lobsel, Zool, Natasha. Welcome. Let's see, last time we, oh, that's right. Shilian had been accused of, going and killing the entire family of another guy. I can't remember his name. Chanchu, I think was his name. He thinks Shilian killed his family. Shilian has been kind of vague about talking about it, but feels guilty, clearly. Hua Chung shows up and says, hey, let's go on a field trip. Totally unrelated, we need to go on a field trip. So they go and they investigate the caves of another powerful ghost named Chi-Rong. They went and investigated. He eats humans, and they snuck in with the humans that were going to be eaten. Of course, Shilian tries to rescue them. At the end of last time, they revealed that when they took off Chi-Rong's mask, he looks very much like Shilian, and that's where we stopped. So, we are in the caves. Shilian and Hua Chung are facing off with Chi-Rong. They also have Lang Changchu, that was his name. The guy that accused Shilian is trapped in a little bottle because Hua Chung, cursed him to become a little doll. So yeah, let us continue with, let's see, Chapter 51, Truth or Deception, Difficult to Discern. When the other half of the mask fell and Chi-Rong's entire face was revealed, it became obvious he didn't look that much like Shilian after all. Their noses, lips, and the contours of their lower jaws were similar in shape, but their brows and eyes were quite different. Shilian's eyes were calm and peaceful. Chi-Rong's brows were high and sharp. His eyes were also much more thin and slanted. He was certainly still a good-looking young man, but anyone could see from his face he wasn't one to be messed with. After having been beaten to a bloody pulp, he could finally squint open his eyes and blearily notice the one grabbing him and changed form into a youth dressed in red. Chi-Rong had never seen Hua Chung's real face, but the moment he saw the red robes, he was shocked and furious. It's you! It's you! Hua Chung had changed back to his true form. You haven't answered my question. How did Prince Anli die? Because of how frightening his eyes looked, Shilian rushed forward and cried, Sun Long! Humans and ghosts alike had already cleared the cave, and Shilian ran to his side. Are you alright? Don't be angry. Please don't be angry. Everything's fine. Just calm down. Everything's fine. He gently rubbed Hua Chung's shoulders a few times, his voice soothingly soft. When Shilian was younger, whenever he got angry or upset, his parents would always stroke his back like this and comfort him with their gentle voices. He used the same method on Hua Chung. Turns out it was quite effective. Hua Chung's eyes were turbulent before, but after being soothed, his lips quivered for a moment, but he finally calmed. His eyes cleared once more. Seeing this, Shilian let out a breath of relief. But suddenly, even before he finished exhaling, Hua Chung swiftly reached out a hand and gently patted his shoulder once. This pat instantly froze Shilian's body and rooted him to where he stood. He hadn't prepared for Hua Chung to do anything to him, which was why this was done so easily. He didn't know what Hua Chung was up to, but he wasn't worried about himself. Rather, he was worried for Hua Cheng, afraid he might lose control again like earlier. He was about to open his mouth to ask when he realized not only could he not move, he couldn't speak either, and felt he may have gotten into a rather difficult situation. That Qi Rong might have been weak in fistfights, but his mouth was certainly tough, and he started cursing while still covered in blood. "You fucking crazy one-eyed snake! Did I fucking piss you off while eating in my own house?" Hua Cheng smiled, then smacked his head down onto the ground again before picking it up. "How did Prince An Li die?" "What the fuck does that have to do with you?" Qi Rong cried, and Hua Cheng bashed him down again. "How did Prince An Li die?" This went on repeat for a while, and Hua Cheng kept his cool smile, dribbling Qi Rong's head like a ball, violently bashing it over 10 times. Although it was violent, Qi Rong couldn't die, and because he couldn't die, it was insufferable. Even a skull made of steel couldn't stand this kind of torture, and Qi Rong finally changed his tune. "If you're so free, why don't you go read a fucking history book?" Hua Cheng laughed coldly. "If history books recorded the truth, why would I come and ask useless trash like you?" He lifted his hand again, and Qi Rong yelled, "It's Lang Chongchu! He was killed by Lang Chongchu!" The Daruma doll in Shi Lian's arms jerked and started shaking vigorously. It was shaking too hard, and Shi Lian couldn't move to hold it down. So alas, he watched as Lang Chongchu, the Daruma doll, fell and spilt onto the ground, madly spinning back and forth. Hua Cheng didn't turn his head, but he undid the spell. A blast of red smoke, and Lang Chongchu's form leapt from within. Hello, folks joining us. Welcome. He was royalty, high and mighty, and had never been wronged like this his entire life. He pointed at Qi Rong in rage. "How could you insult me like this and smear my name? An Li and I were friends. Who did you say killed him?" Qi Rong was shocked to see him jump out. "You're Lang Chongchu? Why the fuck are you here too?" Lang Chongchu himself didn't understand why he was brought to this lair either, but he was simply enraged by Qi Rong's accusations earlier and felt compelled to clear things up. "Prince An Li died of illness. Why would you accuse me of killing him out of the blue?" Hua Cheng looked on coldly, but stopped dribbling Qi Rong's head, so Qi Rong got pulled into the fight. "Died of a fucking illness. Only you would believe it. He died soon after the Gilded Banquet, so he must have been assassinated by you lot. If not you, then those withering old fucks in court." He was muddying the waters and spewing garbage. Lang Chongchu's face was growing grimmer. "No wonder everyone says the green ghost Qi Rong is vulgar and crass. Now that I've met you, you are indeed disgusting." His offhand comment stabbed Qi Rong exactly where it hurt. After becoming famous for so many centuries, all of heaven and hell taunted him for being boorish and crude, and he hated it. His face dropped immediately. "I may be vulgar, but it's still much better than your ignorance. Friends this, friends that. What peaceful relationship? Shanli and Yong'ang can be friends, coexist in peace. You're as fake as your shitty parents. Disgusting." Hearing him insult his parents, Lang Chongchu was furious. "Shut up! My esteemed parents were sincere and genuine, not fake. I won't allow you to spit on their names." Qi Rong spat. "You're all nothing more than the descendants of some rebels. Who gave you the fucking right? What sincerity! To donate titles and land to us, the people of Shanli. Shameless. You robbed what was ours, then handed it back out like it's some sort of gift. Everything you owned belonged to Shanli." Lang Chongchu was not skilled in arguing and actually froze and stuttered. You... Qi Rong saw how he stammered and felt a rush of satisfaction, and resolved to aggravate him even more. He laughed. "Even if you guys killed An Li, it was a profitable death. Shanli lost one man, but Yong'ang paid an entire gilded banquet. Too bad we couldn't kill you too, and have you taste what it's like to end an entire bloodline." Hearing this, Lang Chongchu was bewildered. "What did you say?" Shi Lian mentally cursed. He so desperately wanted to bash Qirong back into the ground the same way Hua Cheng did and shut him up, but with the petrification spell, he couldn't move a single muscle. What do you mean you couldn't kill me too? Qirong only wanted to avenge himself on the vulgar comment and boasted. Truly the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. My lord's stupidity spans hundreds of years. My eyes are opened. To think us Shanli are thoroughly disgusted with you, Yong'ang. Whoever doesn't hate you is unfit to be called a citizen of Shanli. Did you honestly think the royal descendants of Shanli would be friendly with the royalty of Yong'ang? It was all to infiltrate your guard, to make it easy to plot, to wash your gilded birthday banquet with blood. Shanli was struggling to break free, and Lang Shangchu was frozen to the spot. After a moment, he stammered, "The Prince An and the Gyoshi were on the same side?" Lang Shangchu was filled with anguish, thinking his beloved teacher and friend had conspired against him together. However, contrarily, Qirong said, "Gyoshi? The wicked Gyoshi Fangxin? Who the hell is on the same side as him?" Lang Shangchu heard his question and was baffled. You washed the gilded blanket with blood, but the one to do so was not the Gyoshi? You were not on the same side? He was thoroughly confused. Who the fuck knows where that evil cultivator came from, Qirong replied. It had nothing to do with him. Listen up, Lang Shangchu. The blood spilt at your Yong'ang gilded banquet was all done by the people of Shanli. An Li had already planned to kill off every single fucking rebel at the banquet, but that fucking weirdo Gyoshi of yours suddenly busted in. An Li had thought the plans failed and ran to me for help, asking me what to do if he was discovered. But who knew that very night it would be announced the one who fucked everything was the Gyoshi, and he became a wanted man across the entire kingdom. It took Lang Shangchu a while to process that information. If that was the case, why didn't you speak up? Qirong clicked his tongue. Are you fucking dumb? Why would I say anything? Was it a bad thing to have someone take the blame? Can you level me up to a supreme with this lie? He was relishing this more and more. He spoke. I get it. You couldn't believe it, right? I heard you nailed your own teacher into a coffin. What a fucking idiot. You killed the wrong person. Hearing that vile, hearty laughter, Shi Lian closed his eyes and cursed again. Lang Shangchu was trembling with rage. You're wrong! He whipped around and shouted towards Shi Lian. If that was true, even if he didn't say anything, why didn't you? Qirong spat out a broken tooth. And who the fuck is that? What, are you all here to have a fucking party in my cave? Everyone ignored him. Lang Shangchu demanded, if you didn't do it, if you didn't kill, then why did you admit the guilt? Just then, Shi Lian's body became loose. Hua Cheng had undone the petrification spell. However, it might have been too late. Lang Shangchu was waiting for his response, and Shi Lian stood up slowly, working out the kinks in his wrists and joints. After a pause, Shi Lian blurted the words, complete nonsense. Lang Shangchu had fully expected him to say it's true as he said, yet the words Shi Lian uttered completely revoked his sense of guilt from Qirong's recount. Qirong was pissed. Complete nonsense? Says who? Says I, Shi Lian said. He looked down on Qirong and said, all this fibbing and these empty words, what proof do you have that the ones who spilt blood at the gilded banquet were the descendants of Shanli? Qirong was amused. All the killed are dead, so what proof? Besides, it's been hundreds of years. What proof is left? Which is why I say this is all complete nonsense, Shi Lian replied. Shanli and Yong'ang are dynasties of the past, long lost to time. Is there any point in you stirring up trouble with nothing more than bits of history? The tone of his voice startled Qirong, and he looked as if he was remembering something, narrowing his eyes. Shi Lian turned to Lang Shangchu and said in a calming manner, I killed your father. You saw with your own eyes. This was during a time soon after my second banishment. I was filled with frustration and caused a great wrong. This is all my fault. There's no need to drag anyone else down with me. This man is full of deception. Dragging Prince Anli's name through the mud was only to avenge himself of your comment on his vulgarity. If any bystander was to listen to this conversation, they would find it hilarious. A fight for the title to the true culprit of a murder case. One would think the blood spilling at the gilded banquet was some sort of glorious deed. Lang Chongchu was in turmoil and profoundly confused. He held his head and thought for a long time before speaking. That's right, it was you and no one else. He'd seen with his own eyes. That night, he ran to the gilded palace excitedly, only to see the black-clad Gyoshi pull out a thin, long sword from the chest of his father, splattering blood everywhere. At that moment, his father, the king of Yong'an, had stretched out his hand towards him, still breathing. It was after he had rushed over that the hand was dropped limply. Just then, Chi Rong, who was lying on the ground, suddenly spoke up. Cousin Crown Prince, is that you? Da-da-da. And that's the end of that chapter. The most F words said. So, the character of Chi Rong, does lots of those. He's, pretty infamous for his potty mouth, so he's gonna be fun to emulate. What a twist! It seems as if Shi Lian is trying to protect someone or something and take the blame, and we'll see if Lang Chongchu figures it out. Chapter 52, Truth or Deception, Difficult to Discern, Part 2. Shi Lian's gaze moved back to Chi Rong. After staring at him for a moment, Shi Lian said, Chi Rong, it looks like you've been living colorfully these past few years. Right after he finished his words, Hua Cheng removed his fake skin. Chi Rong's eyes widened as each of the three intruders revealed themselves. Lang Chongchu was bewildered. Cousin? Even if earlier, when he heard Chi Rong say, us, Xian Li, and guessed the identity of the Green Ghost's past life was a citizen of the kingdom of Xian Li, he hadn't imagined that he and Xian Li were actually related on a personal level. Chi Rong stared at Shi Lian's face and looked him up and down. It was a gaze hungry with curiosity and fascination. When his eyes stopped at the sword Feng Xin on Shi Lian's back, he suddenly burst out laughing. So that's it! That's it! Feng Xin was you! You were Feng Xin! Although he couldn't understand why he was laughing, Lang Chongchu's guts told him it wasn't anything appropriate, and demanded angrily, What's so funny? I'm laughing at my good old cousin. What's it to you? Chi Rong bit back in a fit. Just now I learned my lord's stupidity spanned hundreds of years. I'm sorry. I apologize. The best way to learn is to learn from the best. Look at your master. No wonder you're so fucking stupid. He turned to Shi Lian. You went to Yong'an and became their Gyoshi and ended up stabbed to death by your own disciple. Is that not exciting? Is that not hilarious? You deserved it, making a fool of yourself. The moment he uttered the word fool, Hua Cheng smashed his head down again violently. Chi Rong had always been tough-skinned, and for some reason, seeing Shi Lian made him 10 times more excited than usual. Even with his face bashed into the ground, he yelled unceasingly, Fool! A fool! A fool! Each time he said it, Hua Cheng would smash his head again. It was a bloody scene, and Shi Lian stopped the hand that was about to strike again. Sun Long, let it go! Why should I? Hua Cheng said sharply. It's nothing. Don't let it get to any of you, Shi Lian said. He is mental and extremely troublesome. I can take care of him. You just sit back and ignore him. He gently rubbed Hua Cheng's shoulder, and it was a long time before Hua Cheng finally replied in a low voice, Fine. Chi Rong plucked his own head from the ground and rolled to the side with difficulty. He spat. Why play pretend with your false kindness? If you really didn't want him to hit me, you would have stopped him from the beginning. Faking indifference and only telling him to let it go now. No one's gonna praise you for your generosity. I stopped him because I don't want him to dirty his hands. Did you misunderstand something? Shi Lian said. A trace of anger flashed through Chi Rong's bloodied face, but he started giggling. Oh, cousin Crown Prince, you're getting along pretty well with Hua Cheng. And here I was just wondering why none of the underlings this little brother of yours sent to greet you on Zhongyan ever returned. It was because they ran into Hua Cheng. Shi Lian had no idea Qi-Rong had actually sent any underlings to go find him. The night of the Zongyang festival, it was a coincidence to have bumped into Hua Cheng. Taking him back to Puqi Shrine wasn't in the plans. It seemed that all of Qi-Rong's underlings had been taken care of by Hua Cheng. Shi Lian couldn't help but steal a glance at the person next to him. So remember a bit earlier, many chapters back, they first meet on that ox cart. They just happen to bump into each other on the way down the road, and for some reason Song Long's there. And then it turns out that it's the day of the Ghost Festival when ghosts can come to the human world and they end up having to run away from ghosts. Qi-Rong was the reason that happened. He sent his underlings after Shi Lian. Hua Cheng apparently heard about it and came to intervene. So, ironically, dumb cousins the reason they met. Qi-Rong continued, calling him San Lang. So familiar. Cousin, you're a big shot heavenly official. How can you hang out with ghosts and demons? Aren't you worried about your reputation? You're so perfect, after all. So pure and flawless. Your halo shines upon all this earth. Many in the heavenly court had more or less thought the way Mu Qing spoke was sarcastic. But if they were to truly listen and compare, they would learn what sarcasm truly is. They had wronged Mu Qing. Qi-Rong didn't just speak, he'd act, too. He folded his hands over his heart and exclaimed, Cousin Crown Prince, this little brother had constantly thought of you over the years. Look, I even meticulously carved this statue to keep you by my side, so I can gaze upon your heroic form every waking moment of every day. What do you think? It's pretty well done, right? Do you like it? Don't worry, if you don't like it, then even better. I'll carve more. The moment he mentioned the statue, Hua Cheng's face immediately darkened. If it wasn't for Shi Lian holding him back, he would have stepped on Qi-Rong's face. However, Shi Lian knew perfectly well the kind of person Qi-Rong was. He was a little mad in the head, and the more extreme the reaction, the more excited he'd get, and the more outrageous he'd become. Reverse psychology was the most effective, so Shi Lian only smiled faintly. It's only alright. Sorry, but the craftsmanship is kind of low class. If you'll remember, there is a statue in the room of Shi Lian knelt over that he was putting his feet on. That's what he's talking about. Yeah, Qi-Rong is totally an asshole. As expected, Qi-Rong's face immediately fell. He said coldly, Enough. If it wasn't for my past affections and me carving a couple statues, who would even worship you? You probably sniveled and whined at Zhengwu's feet and hugged till your knees busted in order to ascend this time. Go around the heavens and see for yourself. Which official isn't more dignified than you? Even a 200-year-old ascendee can walk all over you. You're pretty much 800 years old, but only got so far. What a failure. Shi Lian smiled. I am quite the failure. Not like cousin, already a savage after 800 years. Shi Lian knew way too well how to put Qi-Rong down. Next to him, Hua Cheng snorted, and Qi-Rong's face darkened. He looked between all those present and suddenly said, This stance. Did you beg Hua Cheng to fuck with me today to settle our differences? Shi Lian was taken aback and thought about the picture they painted and actually couldn't argue it. Qi-Rong continued, Look at you all. The moment I say anything bad about you, wow, look how mad he gets. Was he blinded by that holy light from your halo? My fucking god, I forgot. Wasn't he already blind in one eye? Before he could finish, his eyes went dark again and his cheek exploded in agony, spewing blood from his mouth. He got punched again. However, this punch wasn't from Hua Cheng, but from Shi Lian. Shi Lian's fist was faster than the eye could see, and he said coldly, Just because I've never hit you before in the past doesn't mean I would never hit you. The punch was a solid one, and it was a long while before Qi-Rong could make any sounds. He laid on the ground like a mangy dog, clubbing the ground with his fists as he cackled. "Cousin Crown Prince, you hit me! You actually hit me! Heavens, our noble, kind, compassionate, charitable Crown Prince, who's scared of stepping on even a small ant, actually got pissed and swung a fist! He's hitting people! Incredible! Amazing!" He was unbelievably excited, insane with elation. Lang Chongchu had never seen anyone whose words and actions were so mad, and was shocked into stupefaction after witnessing this singular act. He mumbled, Is he crazy? Shi Lian was used to seeing Qi-Rong's madness and didn't think much of it. "You've heard it. He's insane. His heart and mind are unbalanced, so nothing he said is believable." Qi-Rong's laughter came to a sudden stop. He schooled his face and sneered. "Don't be so quick to tell people I'm psycho. Let me ask you, how did Prince Anli die?" That was the question Hua Cheng had posed to him, and now he asked it to Shi Lian instead. Lang Chongchu's attention was suddenly focused on it again. Shi Lian's heart cold and couldn't immediately respond. Qi-Rong, on the other hand, slowly pulled himself up and sat while leaning on the kneeling statue. "After An Li died, I cut open his corpse to inspect it, and all his organs were pulverized by the vibrations of an exceedingly powerful sword, which was why he didn't have any external injuries, but couldn't stop hacking up blood. This was something no regular swordsman could do. At first I thought Yong'ang thugs had brought in some strange hitman as to frame An Li's death as an illness, but now that I think about it, there's another person who could do this. None other than my good old cousin, defender of justice. After all, our flower-crowned martial god, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, is a holy, pure, one and only snow-white lotus of the heavenly mountains." Hua Cheng stomped on him, and Qi-Rong yelped miserably. Lang Chongchu felt like his head was going to explode. He held his head, his eyes laced with red. "Shut up! Just tell me what you know. Who's the real murderer? What happened at the Gilded Banquet? And what happened to Prince An Li? What the hell happened?" "Lang Chongchu, are you still confused?" Qi-Rong said. "Even I pretty much figured out what happened. Looks like you really don't understand the kind of person your master is. Come, let me dissect my good old cousin for you. This former crown prince of Zhanli went and became Yong'ang's Guoshi, taught you swordsmanship for 5 years. He'd only spoken a few words, and Shi Lian reached for his sword. Before he could charge forward, Lang Chongchu's longsword blocked him. "Let him finish. You know he's insane, yet you listen to this mad conjecture?" Feng Xin was swung, and even though it was a slender blade, its shockwave almost made Lang Chongchu loosen his grip on his longsword. But just then, a silver curved blade knocked Feng Xin, hooked it up, and pulled it aside. Shi Lian was startled and cried, "San Lang?" Qi-Rong saw how much Shi Lian didn't want him to speak, and how desperately he didn't want Lang Chongchu to hear the story. So, Qi-Rong had to do the opposite and grabbed the chance. "Prince An Li was our good Shanli boy, very obedient. He heeded my instructions to be false friends with you, but your master bumped into us cleaning out the Yong'ang rat nest at the Gilded Banquet, so An Li escaped. You got to the Gilded Banquet, saw what happened, and the Gyoshi Feng Xin became the most wanted man in the kingdom. This was the previous story, not a word a lie." Shi Lian tried to charge forward to shut his mouth a few times, but each time Hua Cheng stopped him. Shi Lian cried again, "San Lang!" However, Hua Cheng didn't say a single word and only continued to block Shi Lian. The more Shi Lian wanted to charge over, the faster Qi-Rong's lips moved. This saintly cousin of mine, when he saw with his own eyes the people of Xianli committing murder, he must have thought, "How can this be? That's not right." So he went to find Prince An Li to educate him a little, but when he sought him out, my God, what did he discover? An Li's major plot? It wasn't only just assassinating some thugs. There was no way cousin could educate him, so he hardened his heart and killed the last blood of our royal house with his own hands. Afterwards, you caught your master, nailed him dead in that coffin, and so ends my cousin's magnificent life as Kiyoshi. Cousin, am I wrong? He spat a mouthful of blood next to the feet of the statue. I know you too well. You love doing shit like this. Ancestors above, look at what a good descendant you gave birth to. Not only has the Xianli Shi clan lost everything, even the bloodline is cut. Shilian, you ominous star, you god of misfortune. Your existence is Xianli's greatest tragedy. Why won't you die? How do you even have the face to keep living? But I saw my own eyes. He was killed my father with his sword, Lang Chongchu said. How do you explain that? If it's not water getting into your fucking senior's eyes and ruining your sight, I can only think of what reason, Shi Rong replied, which is that An Li for sure stabbed your old man, but he didn't die. Did he drive the blow home? Shi Rong howled. What are you saying? My good cousin is such a kind soul. How could he drive any attacks home? When he arrived, he wouldn't have attacked right away. He'd have to do a show of trying to save the poor guy first. But your old man probably killed himself. What do you mean he killed himself? Lang Chongchu demanded. What's the first thing someone saved from the brink of murder will do? Chi Rong asked. After seeing so many massacred at the banquet, what's your first reaction? Lang Chongchu still hadn't completely deduced it. Find the murderer. Wrong! Chi Rong cried. After my good cousin saved your old man and he revived his breath, he would have certainly said, Quick, Kyoshi, it was Prince An Li who'd done it. Go and kill Prince An Li. No, not just that. He must have said something worse, like, Kyoshi, bring forth Chanchu. Call upon everyone. I want the population of Jianli wiped out. I want to bury them all with the dead. His imitative tone of despair and fury was disturbing to listen to, and Lang Chongchu was growing paler by the minute. Chi Rong continued, Even if he wasn't killed on the spot, your old hag had an entire nest of Thud relatives that were all killed before him. He'd have to open fire on the people of Xianli sooner or later. Your good master realized this, considered his options, and decided, no, the old man couldn't be saved. So, plark, and the old man's heart goes cold. That's the kind of person my good cousin is. A saint who can't have sand in his eyes, always doing shit that harms others and hurts himself. He wants to please both sides, but succeeds with neither. Oh boy. If you're following what happened. So the people of Xianli and the people of Yong'an were at odds. Xianli was the older kingdom that fell because of a war, and Yong'an rose up and took in a lot of the refugees from Xianli moved in. The royal family of Yong'an was trying to keep peace, but the people of Xianli were angry, feeling in some ways justifiably upset about what they'd lost and what Yong'an had taken from them. Some of them planned to assassinate the family, and they succeeded. And the king survived and knew that the Xianli people, or a section of them, had done it, and so probably would have called for a genocide to kill all of the people of Xianli. And Shilian realized this and decided to take the blame so that they would survive. Chapter 53. Truth or Deception? Difficult to Discern, Part 3. Shilian shouted, Chi Rong! You shut your mouth! Lang Chongchu turned his head angrily. Why does he have to shut up? Because what he said is the truth? In that gilded banquet, you and An Li both struck. One killed my entire family, the other finished the blow to my father. You're all lying to me? Shilian responded hurriedly. Don't listen to... Chi Rong cut in. Of course it's a lie! You're so stupid! If not you, who else to deceive? If not for some rando spoiling our plans, Xianli would have already taken your fucking life at the age of 12, instead of giving you the luxury to grow up and ascend. 12? Lang Chongchu repeated. The biggest thing that happened when he was 12 was the kidnapping, saved by Shilian. He demanded, That year, the muggers who intruded the palace to kidnap me were sent by people from Xianli? Duh! Chi Rong clicked his tongue. Do you think any ordinary assassins can just kidnap the crown prince from hundreds of royal guards? Please. I was the one who helped Anli on that. Lang Qiangchu nodded. Helped? Good. I understand. So my friends are all fake. The people of Xianli never cared for our amity. Your Prince Anli never possessed good intentions and came for our lives. He turned to Xilian. So everything you told me was false too. Qirong pretended to look surprised. Come, hurry! Let me hear what my saintly cousin said to you. Lang Qiangchu ignored him and continued to address Xilian. You said Yong'ang and Xianli were but one nation at their roots. Whatever conflicts the royals had with each other had nothing to do with civilians. Both sides used to be one family, and under our generation's rule, their lives could be changed for the better. As long as people were happy, it didn't matter what the royal house was named, and both sides could let go of their grudge and unite in time. All that was false. All nonsense, bullshit, lies. This was what Xilian didn't want to hear the most. He cried immediately. No, it's not false. Think, under your rule, weren't there real changes? Lang Qiangchu closed his mouth, his breath held. Xilian continued. Didn't you do really well? Didn't the remnant citizens of Xianli integrate peacefully with the people of Yong'ang? There were fewer and fewer conflicts and riots, so how could any of it be false? There was a moment of silence, and tears rolled down Lang Qiangchu's cheeks. But what about my parents? Yong'ang and Xianli uniting was their greatest wish. That's why they granted the princely title Anli to the last of your royal bloodline. Their wish came true, but what of their end? Qirong clicked his tongue. What a whiny crybaby, just like my saintly cousin once upon a time. You came crying for your old man and old hag. I haven't even fucking harassed your ancestors for my old man and old hag. Fucking uniting Yong'ang and Xianli was their wish. What pretty words. Anli, settle first, joy after. You think I can't tell it means you Yong'ang dogs want to walk all over the heads of Xianli for the rest of our lives? Xilian yelled angrily. Qirong, stop your madness! Lang Qiangchu, on the other hand, glared at Qirong, tears still falling from his eyes. You're the mastermind behind the massacre of my clan, and you're part of the plot behind the gilded banquet. Qirong snickered. Yeah, I'm part of it. Anli was part of it too. And your master. Us three people of Xianli all had our part. Suddenly, halfway through his laugh, Lang Qiangchu's longsword abruptly swung down and struck. Qirong yelped, and his person was sliced in two. It was an exceedingly gory scene. Both halves of his bodies were rolling around the ground, and his upper body cried, It doesn't hurt! It doesn't hurt! It doesn't hurt one bit! Compared to that punch from Cousin Crown Prince, you're nothing! Lang Qiangchu didn't say a word, grabbed him by the head, and picked it up. Qirong was still spouting insults, but Xilian had noticed something off with Lang Qiangchu's expression. He said hurriedly, Qirong, stop talking if you value your life. Xilian always treated others with kindness and respect, yet Qirong was someone that couldn't be faced normally. He knew this, so every time he faced him, Xilian didn't want to be polite at all, and unconsciously became rude himself. Lang Qiangchu dragged Qirong's upper body and came to the giant, boiling, bubbling cauldron. Do you usually use this cauldron to cook humans? Having been dragged around, Qirong's bloodied carcass drew a thick trail of blood on the ground. Yeah, so? Without another word, Lang Qiangchu let go of his hold. It was hard to discern whether Qirong was screaming or laughing, and the moment he was dropped into the cauldron, his flesh was instantly burnt and boiled to mush. Xilian had not expected this development. His pupils shrank and he blurted, Qiangchu! Lang Qiangchu responded sharply, What? How many people has the green ghost Qirong eaten? We can't teach him what it feels like to be cooked. He's the enemy that murdered my clan. Am I not allowed to make him suffer? Of course he could. So Xilian couldn't say anything, and had no right to say anything. Yet, no matter as the crown prince of a mortal kingdom or the martial god of the east of heaven, Lang Qiangchu had never done such a thing as this. He'd always been straightforward in fights and never used any cruelty. These actions were far from the Lang Qiangchu Xilian knew. After being thrown into the boiling water, after a while, when Chi-Rong was fished up, his body no longer retained a human shape. It instead resembled a melted lump of flesh and skin, bones poking out in some area, terrifying to behold. Yet he seemed quite pleased and was still guffawing. Congratulations, cousin! Look at your good disciple. His wings have hardened. He's cruel and knows how to torture now. Lang Chongchu released his hold again, and Chi-Rong was once again submerged into the bubbling cauldron. This time when he was dropped, it seemed even his bones were dissolved by the boiling liquid. Chi-Rong didn't float up again, and only remnants of green cloth emerged on the surface. After a while, having still not seen his shadow, Xilian couldn't help but call out, "Chi-Rong!" His younger cousin, who once upon a time couldn't shut up about his cousin the Crown Prince, had idolized him and praised him for everything he did. However, after the fall of Xianli, he'd turned into a complete madman. He led the burning of his temples, the desecration of his palaces, commissioned the kneeling Crown Prince statues everywhere, affixing them as thresholds. To make Xilian suffer, he could do anything. Xilian had done his best to put up with the behavior, and if it involved others, he'd do his best to obstruct, until finally, when he could no longer tolerate it, he could only keep away and practice, out of sight, out of mind. Afterwards, they'd lost touch for many years, and Xilian thought Chi-Rong had passed away. Who knew that after so long, he would suddenly meet a figure of the past and see that face that so resembled his? He really couldn't tell whether there were any feelings of nostalgia or remorse. After all, the only ones left from the royal house of Xianli were the two of them. But they hadn't even seen each other for long before he died before him, and he was even cruelly killed by a Lang Chongchu who couldn't even use wooden rods to punish him. So much had happened in such a short period of time. Xilian hadn't even sorted the thoughts in his head, his heart a mess. Lang Chongchu stood next to the cauldron with his head lowered, unspeaking. Just then, Hua Cheng spoke up. "He didn't die." Lang Chongchu raised his head to look at him. Hua Cheng continued, "You don't think this is actually revenge. You only killed one of his many clones. If you want to exterminate him completely, you need to find his ashes." "Thanks for reminding me," Lang Chongchu said coldly. "I will capture him with my own hands and use his ashes to pay respects to my esteemed father and mother. When that happens, I will come and tie things up with you. Kiyoshi, don't you dare think about running away." As he ended his words, he gripped his long sword and struck, slashing the cauldron, and turned abruptly to walk away. Boiling water spilled from the cauldron and liquid filled with slivers of bone poured into the ground. Xilian wanted to chase after him, but he knew it wouldn't be of any use. He braked in his steps and stopped, standing still, unable to speak. Hua Cheng approached him. "He just found out the truth, so it's better to let him be by himself and cool down." Xilian was dumbfounded. Why must he know the truth? Was the truth that important? "Very important," Hua Cheng replied. "He needed to know what was done by you and what wasn't, and why you had to do what you did." Xilian whipped around in a fit and said coldly, "What's the use of knowing everything so clearly? Would I be any more blameless if I killed less people? Would things be less hard?" Hua Cheng didn't respond. A burst of anger rolled up from Xilian's chest, and he didn't even know who to be mad at. He blurted, "What shitty hardships have I experienced? His Majesty the King Father always wanted to integrate the two clans. Did I not kill him? Prince Anli was the last of my family's bloodline. Did I not kill him? No matter what, it's all my fault. So if all the blame goes to me, what's wrong with that? What's there to be afraid of? Whatever comes at me, I can't die anyway. I did this. I bring misfortune. And now I've brought it to Prince Anli, to Chi-Rong, to everyone in Xianli. Is it not better to hate one instead of all? Must he think that everything I taught him was false, nothing more than empty bullshit?" Hua Cheng watched him quietly and didn't argue. The two stared at each other, and suddenly Xilian covered his face with his hands. I'm sorry, Sun Long. I've gone mad. I'm sorry." "It's nothing. It's my fault." Oh. It's so sad. "No, you're not at fault. This is my problem." Xilian slumped to the ground, holding his head. What a mess. What a disastrous mess. After a moment, Hua Cheng sat down next to him. You weren't wrong. Shi Lian held his head and said nothing. Hua Cheng continued. The Yong'an king was killed to protect the remaining people of Xianli. Prince An Li was killed to prevent the two clans from fighting. In the end, to die at the hands of Lang Chongchu, the murderer faced justice. 3 lives exchanged for centuries of peace. It's worth it. If it was me, I would have done the same. Listen to me. His voice was firm, with no room for doubt. You weren't wrong. No one could have done it better than you. Shi Lian was quiet. After some time, he finally said, I just don't think it's right. He slowly lifted his face. I just don't think it's right for someone to have been kind but still receive a bad end. I don't think it should have ended this way. Even if it's fake, I wanted Changchu to remember his benevolence to Xianli would be reciprocated. Doing the right thing will open endless paths. Not like now, where he thinks everything I told him, everything he believed in, were all lies, deception, that everything was goddamn bullshit. He raised his right hand, and while looking at it said, I don't want to see anyone go through what I've gone through. Hua Cheng listened silently. Shi Lian felt self-conscious about the vulgar words he used and apologized again. I'm sorry, but look how incredibly silly things are in this world. The first few generations of Yong'an rule were filled with violence and cruelty, but none died tragically. When it came to Longchu's parents, all they wanted to do was some good, do something great, but it ended the way it did. The king of Yong'an honored him as Gyoshi and treated him with the utmost respect for 5 years. Even at the end of his life, he passed on without any signs of that trust dispersing. Shi Lian's eyes looked far ahead, unfocused. He whispered, I really can't forget the look on his face when my sword penetrated him. Hua Cheng said softly, Forget about it. That was Qi Rong and Prince An Li's fault. Shi Lian shook his head and buried it between his knees, his voice exhausted. Everything was going just fine, too. When Lang Chongchu's father first ascended the throne, his first rule was to break the culture of oppressing the people of Xianli. The people of Xianli and people of Yong'an finally experienced peace among each other for the first time. There were finally winds of change, finally signs of integration, finally hope for leaving conflict behind. And Prince An Li had to pick that time to wash the gilded banquet with blood. That night, when he escaped and found Prince An Li, he was originally going to warn him never to stir up trouble again. Yet after the last descendant of his royal house discovered his true identity, he excitedly grabbed hold of him and asked him to join his grand scheme of revenge and the recovery of their kingdom. His eyes were so red with passion, and his voice so high with excitement, it made one's hair stand on end. He first swore to spill blood at the gilded banquet, then annihilate Lang Chongchu, then cause havoc in Yong'an. They would do this even at the cost of destroying the growing enmity amongst the two people, and at the cost of all the lives that remained from Xianli. As long as they could drag all of Yong'an, royalty and commoners alike, to the depths of hell, they would not hesitate. But in the end, what was killed, what was murdered. However just the reason, however compelling the reason, the truth was he killed with his own hands an honorable king who had wanted to eradicate discrimination, and the last blood descendant of his family in this world. So, he deserved all the blame. What a horrible place to end that chapter, but that is where we're stopping. Oh, that's so sad. But we've come to kind of the explanation for what's been going on, what happened between him and Lang Chongchu, why it happened the way it did, and the introduction of a minor villain, Qi Rong, who will come back and feature quite heavily in future chapters. We still have a few chapters left before we finish Book 1. After Book 1 is ended, we will jump into the past in Book 2. And experience his childhood, which is going to be fun. Thanks for listening. Sorry I sound so sniffly. I'm having a horrible time with dust right now. Ugh. Gonna have a schedule together soon. Everything is a little behind because of the holidays, taking down all of the Christmas decorations, and then cleaning up all the Christmas decorations, which if you've ever frickin' had a tree or wreaths, you know that green shit gets everywhere. Ugh. And then of course after that, the dust is now all in my face. Ugh. Anyway, schedule will be back to normal soon. 4 readings a week, 4 or 5 game streams a week. You know, I'll post something to Discord and Twitter and all that. We're gonna start chapter 54 next time. That's where we are. We will probably finish book 1, I think, because I think it's only 57 is when it ends. So we'll probably finish it next time, next Wednesday. I think readings will start being at 1 o'clock. I'm trying to adjust my schedule to an earlier time, but we'll see. Silent Hill Symbolism is behind this week because I picked a really complicated topic and I got really over-involved in researching it, but hopefully it will be out soon. Books are available. I just got my next shipment. Everybody's orders from last year should be going out today or tomorrow, finally. Yeah, I think that's all my updates for now. More updates in the future. If you like what I do and you want to support it, please consider becoming a member. It really helps me to support the channel and make it so that it's, what's a word for it? So it's just, the snot has just clogged my brain. I have no thoughts, head empty. It helps me when you support the channel. Thank you to all our members today, like Alice and Jeff. Who else was here? Kohi, I believe. Thank you guys for your support. There will be a game stream at some point tonight. I'm gonna finish up some work, and then maybe we'll play Fear. I don't know. We'll play something. But thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.